Welcome to the Slot Assignment Review Form Training, or SARF training. My name is Kira Graves, and I'm the Regional Support Specialist for Region 4. And today I'm presenting this training along with Brandy Martin, who's the Regional Support Specialist for Region 5. Today, we will review the required components of the Slot Assignment Review Form and efforts to help you have a better understanding of the form and the information needed to ensure a clear and concise depiction of the individual support needs. The SARF provides information about the urgency of support needs based on the individual situation. The SARF only needs to be filled out for people who are in the Waiver Slot Assignment Committee, also known as the WSAC Review Pool. The information on the SARF should be current for every WSAC meeting at which the individual is considered. WAMS allows you to carry forward information from a previous SARF and then only update the areas where there are changes. This fact is important, so remember that you, when you're completing this SARF, are painting a picture of this individual for people who have never met them. The only information that they really have from which to make their decisions is the information that's contained in this document. So the more information that you're able to provide, the more detail that you're able to give is going to be better than giving less. During WSAC proceedings, the members will often ask additional questions to obtain more information so that they can have the ability to make the best decisions possible. When you're completing the form, please be sure to give yourself ample time, as the information presented should be thorough, clear, and concise. If for some reason you are not familiar with a specific individual, because maybe they're new to your caseload or new to the CSB, then you should reach out to them or their guardian to obtain the most accurate and up-to-date information. Again, we want to emphasize the importance of obtaining all pertinent information about that person. And this includes their living situations, their barriers and or challenges, and any resources that they may have tried or received. Taking the time to complete this form is a vital part of ensuring that you, as their support coordinator, are actively advocating for the person being presented. So next, we're just going to start going through some of the sections of the SARF. So at the top, you'll have an area for data submission, the WSAC date, which is the date that the WSAC meeting will be occurring, the CSB name, and then the support coordinator's name. There's also an area for you to select a non-PHI identifier. This identifier is determined by your CSB, and typically you should be using numbers from your board's EHR that you're using to identify that person, or you can also use a combination of numbers and letters, but please be sure not to use any made-up names or nicknames as a non-PHI identifier. Sections 1 and 2 for age and then month and year of birth are pretty self-explanatory. And then section 3 for current diagnoses. In this section, you must include a DD diagnosis. Be sure to include any diagnoses of physical disabilities, and then include detailed information about rare diagnoses, and be sure to avoid the use of acronyms or abbreviations. If you are choosing to use any acronyms or abbreviations, make sure you're writing out and spelling out what those things are and what they stand for. We want to avoid having people have to search and dig for information to figure out what we're talking about. And then for number 4, you want to make sure you're listing the names of all medications in this section. It would also be helpful to include what the medication is being used to treat. And then for number 5, this is where you're going to select and document how the individual meets the priority 1 criteria. Priority 1 on the waiting list refers to those individuals who need waiver services within 1 year. This is one of the most pertinent sections on the SARF, as you will be required to clearly explain and document the individual's immediate needs and situations as it relates to the priority 1 criteria. Please remember to be specific. General statements are not helpful to the WSAC members when they're making their decisions. On the next few slides, we will review each of the Priority 1 criterions and important tips to help you with filling out each section. All right, so the first criterion reads, an immediate jeopardy exists to the health and safety of the individual due to the unpaid primary caregiver having a chronic or long-term physical or psychiatric condition that currently significantly limits the ability of the primary caregiver to care for the individual, or there are no other unpaid primary caregivers available to provide supports. So this criterion is only going to apply if the following conditions exist. So there's only one caregiver, and that caregiver has a chronic or long-term condition that causes the individual's health and safety to be in immediate jeopardy. Or there are two caregivers, and both caregivers have a chronic or long-term condition that impacts the health and safety of the individual. Or there are no caregivers at all. The critical elements in determining whether an individual meets this criterion is that the individual's health and safety must be in immediate jeopardy due to chronic conditions limiting the primary caregiver's ability to provide care or the lack of an unpaid caregiver. The presence of a caregiver's physical or psychiatric condition is only relevant if the individual's health and safety is in immediate jeopardy. If the caregiver's condition is the reason that this criterion is selected, then there must be evidence to substantiate the caregiver's diagnosis. CSBs should have documentation available about the jeopardy for the individual and the unpaid primary caregiver's medical or psychiatric condition. A contact or progress note would be considered adequate documentation. This criterion is not met if there is another unpaid caregiver available to provide care to the individual. The next criterion indicates that there is an immediate health and safety risk to the person, their caregiver, or another person in the home due to the individual's risk of behaviors and/or physical care needs. If an individual is receiving supports through another funding source, such as EPSDT, DSA funds, or CCC Plus waiver, the individual should be evaluated with those supports in place. If the individual has those supports and their situation is still not being effectively managed, then the person would meet this criterion. To meet either of the categories, it is expected that all available resources and services have been sought and documented. An individual whose health and safety is at immediate risk due to their behavior needs or medical condition can meet this criterion even if they do not have a primary caregiver. So the third criterion is based on if the individual lives in an institutional setting. This criterion is met if both of the following apply. So first, the individual lives in a setting, such as an immediate care facility for individuals with intellectual disabilities, or ICF-IID, a nursing facility, state psychiatric hospital, mental health institution, or psychiatric residential treatment facility. An assisted living facility, or ALF, does not qualify, but a nursing home does. And second, a viable discharge plan would mean that the person has identified one or more housing options and services that preserve the individual's health and safety and welfare in the community have been identified. The final Priority 1 criterion applies to IDEA services. Individuals with Development Disability Education Act IDEA services are mandated for students through the age of 22. Individuals can be put on Priority 1 9 months prior to the end of their eligibility date to enable them to be considered by the committee prior to their eligibility expiring. So, for example, if someone turns 22 in November, the earliest they can be added to Priority 1 under this criterion would be February of the same year. An individual who chooses to leave school, even though he or she is still eligible for IDEA services, does not meet this criterion until he or she is 22 years of age. If an individual is younger than 22 and has graduated with a standard diploma, it must be clearly documented in their record in order for them to meet this criteria. An important fact is that this criteria is going to be limited based on an individual's age. So once that individual reaches the age of 27, they no longer qualify for this criteria. They should only remain as a Priority 1 if they qualify under an alternate criterion.
All right. Thank you, Kira. Um, my name is Brandy Martin, RSS with Region 5. I'm going to pick up with the SARF safety risk. So next is Section 6, and this reviews the individual's safety risk in their present environment. So with this particular section, we're going to check all the challenges that apply to the person. You want to make sure that you're detailed when describing and documenting the intensity and frequency. The intensity should include the use of descriptive words and examples to explain what those challenges look like. Documenting serious is not a great descriptor and does not explain what the challenges are clear enough. So, for example, the individual will kick and hit his mother when the tablet or phone is taken. This example describes the behavior and why it happens. When we talk about frequency, that's going to document how often the challenges occur. Words like frequent and infrequent do not and are not helpful. They don't provide meaningful information. So you want to use descriptors for frequency. They should include words like daily, weekly, monthly, and etc. You want to provide examples of incidents that have occurred. Document how often these incidents have occurred. Remember, you are providing a full picture of the individual's challenges for the WSAC members. Clear and concise descriptors are helpful and warranted. All right, Section 7. That's going to address the challenges and barriers related to community integration and social isolation. So in this section, you're going to list and describe what challenges or barriers limit the person's access to the community and social interactions with others. You want to explain how the person is impacted. If the individual is homebound, why is this the case? What are the limitations? If they live in an institutional setting that impacts services, how long and for what reason has this person been in this setting? What is the primary caregiver's ability to ensure community integration? So when you go through these sections, you want to make sure that when you're completing the SARF, you want to make sure that you provide answers to these questions so that the WSAC committee can clearly identify the challenges and why they're not being met. All right, Section 8. This is going to explain what resources have been sought and or received to address the needs of the individual. So in this section, you're going to review the resources listed. If no application has been made for the potential resource, explain the reasons why. Remember, it is expected that individuals pursue the supports they're eligible for. If applied and denied, you want to make sure that you provide a denial reason. A denial reason of does not meet criteria needs, excuse me, a denial reason of does not meet criteria needs to be supported by documentation that an application was made to the appropriate agency. If applied and received, you want to provide the number of hours and the type of support. You want to document who is providing the support. And if the person is not eligible for the service, you want to explain why they're not. You want to avoid answers like, the individual didn't know this was a resource, or putting that I don't know. It is the responsibility of the SC to inform the family of what resources are available and link them to the services as appropriate. All right, the next two sections are going to review natural supports that are available and the role that they play in the person's life. Okay. For question 9, you're going to consider the following. What is the caregiver's ability to support the individual? And what are the challenges present in providing natural supports? Okay. Example, mom doesn't drive, so they rely on family to access the community. Okay. Another example, if overstimulated, the individual will fall to the ground and bang his head. So as a result, grandma struggles to redirect the behaviors while in the community. All right, question 10 talks about other natural supports in a person's life, such as family members or neighbors. Um, an example here, a family friend takes Jane to church on Sundays. So, another example would be the individual sister helps with ADLs twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Okay. So that shows the person's, even though they're receiving natural support, it shows the person's availability. Okay. All right. Section 11, A, B, and C. This describes where the individual would like to live, what they would like to do during the day, and if their guardian, if they have one, agrees with their wishes. So here you want to keep in mind that not all individuals speak with words. In this section, you want to be detailed in describing what you know about this person's, what their wishes are, what you know about them. Do they communicate with pictures, sign language, or some other way? Do they smile or show excitement in response to questions if they're unable to use words? And then also you want to indicate whether or not the guardian agrees with the person's wishes. If they do, uh, please tell us why and how you know. And if they don't, please indicate that as well. All right, section 12. Um, what will happen and when if the individual is not assigned an available waiver slot? Okay. So here, this question also states or describe indicators that support this statement. So here you want to give specific examples and a timeline of what will happen if the individual does not receive a waiver slot. For example, you would want to tell us if the guardian can no longer care for the person and how long before they must move. All right, section 13. This lists all the services available through the waiver. So you should only mark those services which will alleviate the immediate needs of the individual. The services you select need to be needed within 30 days of being awarded a slot. Okay. Do not select services that the individual will need for future use. For example, do not mark group home because the individual may need that one day in the future, although the family wants them to remain in the family home for now. So Again, make sure that you're only checking the services that are going to alleviate the immediate need. This is not a time to check off services for future use. Also, please keep in mind, in-home and 24/7 residential services cannot be used together. So these two options should not both be marked. Okay. Be detailed in explaining how the service will support the individual. Section 14 is for any other information which was not previously mentioned. You're going to review the information you've already provided and ask yourself, does this paint a full picture of what the individual's life looks like? Is there anything not addressed in other sections? As we've said throughout this training, details are important. All right, the SARF summary. The slide assignment review form is your chance to present the individuals we support to the WSAC members. When completing the forms, keep in mind that WSAC members do not know the individuals. They only have the information you are giving them in the SARF. Each individual deserves to be represented in the most thorough way possible to the committee. Remember, you are advocating for them. All right, here are your regional support unit contacts. All right, this is the most up-to-date contact information for the RSS team. If you think that your specific board could benefit from a one-to-one training, please reach out to your RSS to schedule an in-person or virtual training session, and they will gladly assist you. All right, this is the end of our training. Thank you so much for your time and attention.